show today, we have Andrew Trappen. Andrew has over 20 years' experience in a variety of senior recruiting roles for a number of Fortune 100 companies. And after launching his career in the Silicon Valley, he made his way north to Seattle, and today he's sitting down with us to make the case on why cover letters are a valuable tool in your job search toolkit.
This is The Career Queue, a podcast focused on helping you navigate the signals in your career to keep you growing and moving forward in business and in life. Here's today's host, Stacey Harris.
So it's so great to have you here, Andrew. Thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you so much. I'm very honored to be here. Thank you.
I'm really looking forward to this conversation today because I admittedly am one of those people that have probably underestimated the value of a cover letter. So I have a feeling I'm going to be able to take some nuggets away for my own personal career strategy. But let's get started. So why don't we just share with listeners why having a cover letter is important and what value it can bring to a career search?
Awesome. Well, I'm glad to hear that you're enthused about this as well. But they are as important, and I think this is important for your listeners to get this. They are as important as resumes. Okay? That is the way to think about cover letters. When we express interest in a job, we have very limited chance to provide evidence of our being qualified, right? In our job search, we all want choices. This is something I tell everyone I work with on our job searches. That is where the power is when we have choices. And at the point of applying, we have some choices. It's our first time of having a choice about that job. First, it's to apply, right? That's a choice. Secondly is to provide more information about yourself and why they should consider you, or provide less information about yourself and why they should consider you. So we all make a choice when you apply to a job to share more or less information. So if you're serious about your expression of interest to any job, you need to submit a cover letter when you're given the chance. I'm not talking about submitting a novel. It's really about the value proposition, what the different types of information is that you can provide. Right? When I say more information, I don't mean massive loads. I mean more information, like different types of information.
So this is a case where almost like Goldilocks, right? You don't want too much and you don't want too little. You want the right amount of information. So it's interesting because it might, bring a questionable look on people's faces when they say less information, when in actual fact, if you're providing too much or if it's not relevant, it actually can be a hindrance for you.
Absolutely. We'll talk about tuning that. And so that really goes into the value of cover letters. And that is to provide the employer with a glimpse into why, right? The why behind your application, the higher motivation for applying, why it's you that they should consider, not someone else who might have the technical functional skills or background, right? What differentiates you is the why. Remember, your resume, if you think about what's on that document, is really about what you've done in your career, when you did it, where you did it, and how you did it. If you're smart, you're talking about the impact you're making on your resume. But that's the when, the what, the when, the where, and the how, right? There's really no why. If you really think about what's on your resume, I even got caught myself thinking about that introductory sentence at the top where many people in the style of resume where you have a statement of goal or objective on top, but that's still not a why typically. That's usually a what. What am I looking to go do, right? So really understand that. And if you want to apply someplace, again, you want to give them your why, not just your what. So another value, though, let me tell you, besides just the powerful thing of giving the why and making you different from other candidates is that the employer has a chance to understand how well you write. Because truly, resumes are oftentimes not complete sentences. Usually you're coached not even to put periods on your resume, right? It's not an English grammar kind of document, right? You're not going to look and really get a lot about someone's sentence creation and sentence skills, right? So this is an opportunity for you to exercise your ability to write, especially if the job is going to include any writing, and that's pretty common today, whether it's an email or otherwise, right? So we're going to make each sentence critical in this and apply our best word selection, build the most concise, powerful sentences as possible, as much as we can, and it's transparent. As well as we do that, they'll observe it, right? But don't worry, do the best you can. Now, if you want help, if you're someone who says, that sounds scary, right? I know my English skills are not the best they could be. School was so long ago. I don't write regularly on my regular job. So there are several tools out there you can go to improve your writing skills. One that I think that is almost ubiquitous with the topic is called The Elements of Style. It's a book by Strunk and White. If you go search Amazon for The Elements of Style, you'll see thousands of people have reviewed like 5 stars on it. It's one of the only ones that I bothered reading through. And it goes through like the basics, how to use punctuation, word selection, all kinds of stuff that's really, really healthy for you. So if you're looking to beef that writing skill up, go for that book. Finally, there's a third value. And this is something that I really got to actually thinking about today's talk. Making the extra step of writing down your why you're applying to a job should actually help the person applying, really think, is there a strong why? Is there a real connection between this job, this company, with my career path, my interests, my preferences, my passions, my purpose in life, whatever it is, however deep I've gotten? So if you have trouble determining how this company or this job align to your mission or your passion or your values, right, and you might really second guess why you're applying to the job. Now, I know that sometimes in life we have seasons, right? Pages in life, seasons in life where we have to take jobs we wouldn't really want to consider on our career path. And that's not what I'm talking about. That's acceptable. There's sometimes where you just have to do that to keep things going. And that's not what I'm talking about. But when you're actually driving forward in your career and you're applying to jobs like most of us are, hopefully in job search, looking for that next step in your career, use that as a validation. Because if I would just second guess it, right? If you cannot think through why this job, why it's so important to you, then why pass on it. Go to something else that you can actually get passion behind. Because we all know, as hard as we work today, the 50-plus hour week that is normal, you've got to have passion and real interest in doing what you're doing. Otherwise, you'll just burn out.
Well, and that sounds like it's a good piece of advice, even if you don't feel like you're an active job search candidate, that, it might also serve as a great opportunity for you to evaluate the why of you in your current role.
I love it.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, so let's just state that out. Everyone who's right now listening that is in a current job and not searching, write a cover letter for your current job.
That's a great
love
idea.
that idea.
Yeah.
That is really good.
Yeah.
Because
we don't want to lose sight of that, right? Like we don't. Sometimes, in the seasons of life, you're like, I'm not sure if I want to be doing this. So maybe perhaps a part of your career evaluation is, do I want to stay or do I need to start looking outside?
Yeah,
so
I totally agree.
That's great. Well, and we've had a couple of healthy hallway conversations with folks, right, about who does review them or consider them and who doesn't, and even if it's just 1 out of 10 recruiters or hiring managers that take into consideration a cover letter or appreciate a cover letter, that may be that one person that's going to help open the door for you to be able to step into the next step of your career.
You're absolutely right. And in all my years, I've only worked with one hiring manager that actually would not review people. And that's a different kind of problem for a recruiter to manage with a manager, because that's not really a legal way to separate candidates. But I've worked with a manager who is so diehard about cover letters and understanding the why behind a person's application that he would only look at applicants with cover letters. Now, somewhere between that completely end of the spectrum and the other end where they're completely ignored, no one ever looks at them, right? Yeah, you're right. And let's say it's even the Pareto rule, 20%. And maybe it's even less, but let's say it's the 20%. You're right. It's the invisible 20%. Mm-hmm. Which recruiter, that job you just applied to yesterday, is that recruiter looking for a cover letter? Are they reading them? Are they helping differentiate candidates that way? Is the manager, even if the recruiter's not, is the manager?
Yeah.
And because that could happen, right? The recruiter and manager aren't always looking at the same exact information at all times. So great point. You never know, and that's it. So why would you take the chance?
Yeah.
And what I hope we'll share today in today's talk is the fact is you're writing a well-crafted cover letter for a specific job, and if you get to interview later with that job, that content you've written, the thought process you went through to write that down, that language is going to come back into play in your phone screen, in your interviews. Mm-hmm. Someone's going to ask you, why are you applying to this job in this interview? Now, if you've already actually authentically thought about it, right, you're going to have a ready-to-go answer that's real.
Yep.
And they won't have to listen to you go, well, let me think about that for a minute. Because, wow, you should know the why.
Right. Yeah.
By that point, right?
Yeah.
And it's not going to be some halfway answer, right?
Insincere,
Half-baked
yeah.
or sounding like it's not real and
Yep.
doesn't align to other things you've said. It's going to be authentic and valuable.
That's great.
So, yeah.
So actually, let's talk about some of the mistakes that folks make with their cover letters. So what are the top 3 that you see?
Thanks. I would say the biggest one, maybe it's obvious, is that they just don't submit cover letters. Again, most times when you apply to jobs online today, you either have a chance to upload or attach, or you have a chance to paste or write in a text field a cover letter. Almost every application I've ever seen allows you to do one or the other. Now, there are some sites or some companies that don't allow you to provide another document other than your resume, but most do. And most people are just passing this up. I don't have the data on that because that would be tough to get with so many different companies out there. But I'll bet you it's out there someplace. I just know for a fact it's not done. So people are missing it. And I hope we're past that point. For anyone, again, shame off anyone who's listening to this that's not used cover letters in the past. We're past that, right? We're going to do that. So we're not going to make that mistake. The other mistake people make is not investing in a self-evaluative pre-work that's necessary to really document an authentic message, right? It takes work, and not all of us have been blessed to be at the right companies that resource us as employees with different tools to look in ourselves and self-develop, right? A lot of people haven't. So many people have never done some of the things I know that we've done working at Fortune 100 companies. So there's some things I'll share with you that would help you do that self-evaluation, that pre-work of knowing yourself so that you can more easily connect what you're about with a job or company. And then finally, I'd say some people just restate the resume. I mean, the resume, the what, the how, the when, that's already on your resume. They're getting that already. The fact is, don't restate your resume. And that's what some people do. They just don't know how else to do a cover letter, so they just restate exactly, technically, functionally why they fit to this job. And it's a waste of reading. Someone's going to read that and seriously think, why did I just waste my time?
Why bother?
It's all about their resume.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So we'll tackle those latter 2 problems here, hopefully, in our talk as well.
Oh, yeah. Well, actually, that'll segue us into what are the elements that need to be in the cover letter. So let's talk about those different elements that you need to be addressing in your cover letter versus what you already have in your resume.
Awesome. Well, that's really important. The versus the resume. That's where I want to really start. Let's make sure we're really clear on this. Since you're submitting a resume, don't repeat that information that's on your resume at the depth that it is on your resume. That would be wasting your time, okay? Resumes show your career history, what I call the physics of your professional path, right? Where have you gone? What have you done? Where have you done it? And how have you done it? What are the results you've gained, right? Really, that's what that's about. It also has your education, your certifications, all the facts of your background, right? Resumes need to be accurate and relevant to the job, right? You can't mislead people. Accuracy is huge. So many people put resumes to companies, and it's unfortunately a high percentage that have inaccurate information on them, and they get caught in background checks. So no, always accurate and, of course, relevant to the job. The cover letter expresses, like I've said, the why. It's the why behind your expression of interest. What about your values, your mission, your passion, on top of your experience, makes you the right person for this job, this company? The cover letter tells readers your application is meaningful, not just another applicant looking for whatever job they can get, right? So cover letters, the way I say it, need to be authentic, that's the key, and meaningful to the employer. Now that's a relevant term, a relative term, so we can talk about how we can make it meaningful. But that's what I would say. That's how they differ, the resume and the cover letter.
And it's important to actually have the balance of both, because if you're only writing it for it to be meaningful to the employer, you're likely going to miss that authenticity for yourself.
Absolutely.
So, but if you're only being authentic to yourself, you're likely not going to be able to message any meaningful benefits towards the employer.
That's right.
Yeah. Okay, that's great. So let's talk about getting to that authenticity and the meaningfulness behind the cover letter.
Awesome. I'll do my best to help you do that. So I would say that different people talking to different coaches might have learned different approaches to this, but I'll share the best of what I can with this. So to enable ourselves to easily create authentic and meaningful expressions of our why, right, we first need to, as I said, really understand ourselves. Now, some of your listeners may be well past that, but I want to help people through that real quick and give you some resourcing on that. So several resources you can find out there would include things like personality type assessments. That includes the epic Myers-Briggs and all the derivations thereof, the DISC format, and there's many others, actually. I just took a really interesting one that's based on brain science, and it has to do with the areas all of us humans share that we experience either reward or threat in our lives. And I learned through taking that, trust is like my highest angle. So this is one angle. So I have taken many different types of these personality and knowledge assessments, self-evaluation assessments, so that I understand myself more than anyone else does. I think that's appropriate. Those are ones I would suggest you do. With these, I think you can really affirm your preferences. And what's interesting is you may actually get actionable language surrounding your strengths or your style that could relate to the why you are interested in this job or this employer. Truly, some of these Myers-Briggs breakdowns, and one of them I'd just say website-wise, you can do this for free. There's a lot of low-cost options out there too, and they might give you more information. But the free one for Myers-Briggs is 16personalities.com. And again, some of the language that comes out of that is really going to resonate with you. It's going to be absolutely accurate about you, and it might be phrased in a way that you like and you feel you could use, but you wouldn't have probably naturally come to on your own. So this is one thing those assessments will do for you, is give you some language to think about and massage as you create your own voice. Otherwise, there's personal development books, of course. I'm sure many of us have, like I do, a load of personal development books, whether it's the big names or local people, and there's lots of those available. If nepotism is allowed, I have to share that my wife's book called Fire Up, Take Your Life and Business to 11 is one of those that is awesome. And she takes you through her core 4. And this is the same kind of thing you'll find in different places, but she packages it differently. And it's where you identify your values, really align words to your values. She helps you identify your purpose, and she has a way to help you do that. Other authors and programs will do it differently, but she helps you find your purpose and define it. She helps you define your niche. That is, what is your focus in life, in your career? What are you actually going to focus on? And then she helps you message that. How would you actually communicate that out? But it's all really about self-development. I did a little work real quick to look and see what else was out there about this. And if you've never tried this, try Find My Why on Amazon, or just Google Start With Why or Start My Why. There's this actually a website, startwithwhy.com. And it is intense looking, very well-produced website and program. And that's all it's about, is about helping people come down to understanding their purpose and their why. So there's lots of resources out there. Take advantage of it, people, especially if you're in a job search. Take the few hours to do something that you've never done before, if you've never done this, and learn a lot about yourself. And then finally, really get down and dirty with yourself. And so what I really think is an exciting opportunity with a loved one, with friends, with trusted colleagues, actually get a little vulnerable and have that open dialogue. Ask these people, what do you think my purpose is? Given all that you've experienced with me, Stacy, what do you think my purpose in life is, right? And learn from each other, because you start to step into brand right there. What do people say about you or think about you without you telling them anything, right? So anyway, that's a different story. But the point is, you can have kind of a really healthy conversation. And actually, if you do this, of course, with trusted people, right, you can actually deepen your relationship. You're going to go places you probably haven't gone, learning about each other and how you feel about each other and what you know about each other and don't know about each other yet. I think it should be a really fun exercise to try that. So once you put your words to value, or put words to your values, right? Once you can write about them, you have words written around them, and your purpose and your mission, whatever verbiage you want to use, you can start to write sentences. You can start to construct content with those words, right? So the idea first is fuel yourself with understanding those words that represent your values, your purpose, your why, your style, your preferences, right? Your career preferences, job preferences, all of this stuff. And these areas that I've shared with you will help you get there if you don't have that already at hand. The second part is really getting to understand the opportunity and the company, right? So first, really know thyself deeply. And then you need to understand the company and the opportunity. And you do this more quickly. This isn't as introspective. This is observation and reading and all of this. So you do this with each job you apply to, right? And some of you are already doing this, but really you want to read the job description carefully, the full job description, not just the title and the first few sentences and hit apply and start going. No, read the full job description. Note to yourself, it's going to happen naturally. Where are you strongly aligned? Where does your background strongly meet the requirements? Where do you see gaps? Where do you see them asking for things or describing work that you've not done or asking for experience you don't yet have, right? So you're gonna start to understand what's being asked for and how you align. Review the company's career site, right? Usually companies that have developed career sites will offer information other than posted jobs. They'll talk about what it's like to work here. They may talk about things like their values or their mission there. Otherwise, if they don't really go there in their career section, go to the About This Company information, usually way at the bottom, right, of most web pages, and About is right there. Basically, find out what they're talking about wherever they do it. Understand whatever they're choosing to publish for you to understand. And I'll give you an example of what's so critical with one company, if it's all right. But basically, if they've published it, it's all there for you to know, right? And they think it's important, their mission, their values, and their leadership principles, right? That last one, I'll give you a case in point, and a tip really for anyone interviewing at Amazon. I don't know if you know this, Stacy. If you go interview at Amazon Corporation, you've got to know their leadership principles and how your background aligns to those leadership principles. What have you done in the past that demonstrates you have actually lived through or demonstrated or exercised those principles in your life? If you don't do that, I guarantee you it's a thing they've been moving to more and more. It's one of the most direct examples, in fact, and that's why I'm sharing it. Some companies hardcore align to the things they tell you on your website, not just a job posting, leadership principles, for example, like I said with Amazon. Boom, it's the key. You go there, miss that point, you're not likely to get a positive outcome.
So that might be just an interview tip for those folks that'll be interviewing at Amazon in the future. But also, it's probably a part of that prep that it wouldn't hurt for you to already have that information regardless of whether it comes up in the interview or not.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so whether, let's say, another company who has their leadership principles or mission or values up on their site, but you've never heard from anybody that it's actually a big part of the interview, it's certainly very meaningful, again, for you to align the connections, right? Your values and theirs. Do they align? Okay, now you're starting to fuel some of your content for your cover letter, right? You're starting to see that you share in your view of this world some of what they view in this world and their mission as a company or the job itself, perhaps. So basically, the other thing you want to do is you have obviously Glassdoor that's out there, right? And other resources where you can get current employee and past employee and interviewee, I should say, feedback, right? So you can get a lot of information there. And I would look for the positives. I would be careful about the one-off bad information or the negative feedback. If you see major trends of negative feedback, again, don't focus on that right now. But if you do see lots of trending, negative, consistent feedback about a company you're going to apply to on Glassdoor, you might take a note on that. And later, when you get to interviews, once you get to that choice of being invited to interview, you might choose to tactfully ask a question around that content in such a way that you're not going to offend the company, of course. But my point is, at this point, when you're still just not yet even applying, you're just trying to fuel the information, fuel yourself with what information you need to write a excellent cover letter, a meaningful cover letter. You need to understand about the company. And that's one way you can learn about the company as well, is, again, especially the positive stuff on Glassdoor, because that's the stuff you want to tie to, right? You want to tie your background and your interests and passion to the positive stuff about the company, not some of the naysayer complaints about the company. That wouldn't make any sense.
Yep.
But still, it's a resource. I'm not saying to miss it. Now, basically, if you've got the two parts, right, if this is hopefully coming together for you, you've got your side of things, you understand yourself, you've got all this language, maybe you've written down on a single page someplace all the different language you want to use about your passion, your mission, your values. You've got these words written down, right? Your preferences, you've got some of these from these assessments, or maybe you can just pull them out from looking at your background and what you liked about jobs or didn't like about jobs, right? You have that stuff written down. Then you've got now this research you've done on the company. You've read the job description, et cetera, like we just said. So now you want to put these together, right? So in terms of the format, you're always going to use the business letter format for uploading or attaching your cover letter. If you're pasting or writing a cover letter into a text field, you can paste the whole thing if you want to. If you've got it on a Word doc already, you've done it up on a Word doc in business letter format. But I personally omit the business address, the top left part of the formal business letter, right? I start with the salutation and go forward. It's really up to you. There's no absolute law about this. But I would say it's important to know if you're uploading or attaching, then yeah, you want to have a formal cover letter format, business letter format. And I know Microsoft Word. I'm not sure about Google Docs, right? They all have several templates available for you to use. But I'm going to give you an idea of, I think, the structure of the letter that is a good basic structure that is easy to attain and will capitalize on those things we just talked about. So there's an introduction, right? And the introduction just highlights what you explain in more detail in the body, right? It's really just a couple sentences, the introduction, 1 or 2, maybe 3. The body, of course, is the meat of the whole thing. I suggest 2 paragraphs, and I'll talk through what I suggest is those 2 paragraphs being built around. But it can be 2 or 3 paragraphs. You don't want to get too wordy. You really don't want to fill a single page completely, right? This is supposed to be an easy, concise, meaningful read, right? And then there's the closing. And it is important in the closing, just recognize it's not just a, hey, thanks, No, it's absolutely asking for the interview, right? Don't ask for the job. I mean, you can do that, but that's not really what you're asking for right now. You're just asking for the interview. That's what you want. I'd love to come in and interview with you guys. Maybe you don't say you guys. That's a bad habit. Sorry.
That's more conversational. Yes.
Love to come in and interview with your company based on what I've shared with you, et cetera. And then give them action. You can reach me at and give your phone number. If you don't want to do that, give them an email. But yes, on your letter right there, give them a phone number or an email in your closing. Make that a close, a real sales close, if you will. Give them a direction to go. Tell them what you want. Right?
That clear call to action.
Absolutely.
Yep.
So this is how I feel about if you're writing one for the first time. Since the intro really reflects the body, start by writing the body of the email, of the cover letter, sorry. Ultimately, the one approach that I use, like I said, is 2 paragraphs. I try to build the first paragraph around the personal expression of my motivation for the job or company, okay? So one of the paragraphs is not going to talk about my career history, my background, my skills, anything like that. It's going to be about my passion, my interests, all the why, the purpose of my life, my preferences in work style, the mission, whatever, like I said, all the aspects that would form your why, your preferences, et cetera, right? That's the first paragraph, right? So this is really about what differentiates you from your technical functional skills, the why. The second paragraph is really highlighting the connection of your career path with a job. So not in detail. You're not going to restate your resume here. But this is where I do bring in aspects of my career. In my second paragraph, that's where I'll allude to perhaps the trajectory, the direction of my career, and how this is the right next step. Or maybe I've made some changes in my career, and this job capitalizes on both aspects of my career, right? Very different aspects of my career. But basically at that very high level, whether it's a linear thing, it's the right natural next step, or 2 examples anyway, or really it's you have 2 very different backgrounds in your career so far, and you are capitalizing on both in this job. There are other ways to do this, but those are 2 examples of how you'd basically highlight why your career path is especially putting you in the right place for this job. That's the way I like to do it. So the personal appeal, the differentiation by the personal why, my motivation, and then, of course, the career path and why that is, again, a why. It's a job why is the second one, the job background why or career path background why. Does that make sense, the first and second?
Absolutely,
all right.
Yeah.
So once you have 2 to 4 sentences that you're really confident in for each paragraph, really it could be 4 or 5 sentences, you can, have 2 inches of, written normal 12 font or what, right? Again, you're not going to fill the page. But once you've got enough written that you can have a paragraph for each of those, then just go ahead and think about how you'd write an introduction, since the introduction is appealing to, like opening the reader's eyes to what are these 2 paragraphs going to be about. And I think in my approach, it's a simple approach. Again, the first paragraph, you just are talking about more of the softer stuff. It's your motivation, your why. The other stuff is really the career stuff. So you can form a simple sentence, introduction sentence that says, based on my motivation X, Y, Z, right, or my interest in purpose or passion or preferences, I am certain I will provide value given the alignment of my career, the da-da-da-da-da-da-da, right? So try crafting sentences where you flow through both the topic of your first and second paragraph in one smooth sentence. Check yourself, make sure it's not too cocky, too overbearing. Don't overpromise, but just give a summary statement up on top there that's really saying, here's what you're about to read and why it's important to you. Then you got your first and second already built. And then, of course, the closing is easy once you've done it once, because this is the one part of all of them, of all your different cover letters you create for all different jobs that may not change as much, right? You can really come up with a sharp statement that asks for the interview and offers a way for them to engage you. That really doesn't need to change too much. But if you have that in your template and one day you're just feeling like you want to tweak that sentence or add a second closing sentence because of some specific connection you've drawn in those paragraphs, well, of course, you could edit that. But it's basically make sure you don't ignore the purpose is to tell them you want the interview and give them a way to reach you.
That's great. Right. So we're actually going to take a quick break. But when we come back, we're actually going to bounce off what you just said when it comes to using a template across the board, especially if you're very active in your job search, and what we do when we're looking at roles that maybe have similar responsibilities and whether the same cover letter should be used. So stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to check out the show notes at thecareerq.com, where you can also subscribe to the podcast and sign up for our newsletter.
So welcome back. On today's episode, we're speaking with Andrew Trappen about the importance of cover letters. So, Andrew, just before the break, you had made reference to templates, so let's talk quickly about applying for similar roles, maybe with similar responsibilities. Mm-hmm. Is it okay to use the same cover letter over and over? Is there a short answer?
I would say heck no. No, it's really not. Don't use the same letter without thinking about it. Let's just go back to the concept of this cover letter needs to be, right, authentic and meaningful. So within that constraint, there might be the rare occasion that you might be able to use all or most of a cover letter for a second job or another job that you created for a first job. That might be possible, but I would say overall you need to have in your head, always customize your cover letter to the degree needed to make it authentic and meaningful. You know, as a point of reference, I know you guys have someone else talking about resumes, because that's such a major topic. But in my experience, I've learned that even resumes should be refined per application, right? So you detail more or less of some part of your experience or your skill that's required for that job. Always being, of course, accurate, right, and relevant, but really on the cover letter, you want to think the same way, right? There's probably some difference between if it's a similar role but a different company, probably different values, different mission at the company. But let's say it's the same role at the same company. There's your best chance that possibly, if you don't know anything different about the role or the company and et cetera, that you might be able to use the same cover letter. Just always test yourself, right? It's got to be authentic and meaningful.
Yeah, no, right? That's great. So let's talk about what risk you are taking if your cover letter isn't considered strong enough. So you've taken the steps to know that you're going to be the person that submits that cover letter versus the candidate that's applying after you. But let's talk about the fact that it does have to be strong, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Well, I'd say the one thing is understand that in most cases, and this is based on my experience, so you tell me how you feel about this, but based on my 20 years, the resume is what's being read first. Even though on paper, when in the old-fashioned days when you handed paper in, right, the cover letter would be literally, that's why it's called that, the cover on top. But usually I wouldn't waste my time, or I know that people usually would not waste their time reading that cover letter, the why that differentiates you, unless I can see the technical functional background, right? The jobs you've held, the experience you have, make it worth my time spending another second on your resume, because resumes are read very quickly, as you know. You know, some people say 3-6 seconds, right? 3 or 4, 5, 6 seconds. So just to glance through that resume to make sure it's relevant. Then recruiters invest more time in it. Then it's where if it's a recruiter that reads cover letters, then I think you're going to find a recruiter based on just the economics of time that will read that cover letter, right? So if they end up with 3 excellent resumes and 2 of them have cover letters, right? My guess is in many cases, some recruiters may read those, some won't, right? Again, we talked about this earlier. It doesn't matter. You don't know which recruiters are going to read them or not. So you want to be part of the 2 that do have a cover letter, right? And you want to have a powerful cover letter that's simple, 2 paragraphs, like I said, is one idea anyway, that really are meaningfully connecting your why, both your motivation, your passions, your purpose in life, as well as trajectory or career goals, et cetera, and why that connects, right? Very meaningful, powerful right there. That's going to differentiate you among those 3 people sitting there. And again, if the recruiter doesn't look at that cover letter, the manager may be looking at it. But if the resume is not a match, I would say don't count on your cover letter being read or valuable, if anyway, read at all. So always apply to the job, making sure your resume is first and foremost accurate and relevant, right, to the job.
And that should be a part of your why evaluation, right?
Absolutely.
Why am I applying for the job?
Absolutely.
Do I have the technical skills for it? And then how do I message the why I would want to be a part of that organization?
Absolutely.
That's great. That's great. So unfortunately, we're running out of time. We're going to have to continue this conversation, and we'll have more information about Andrew and all of his valuable insights available in the show notes at thecareerq.com. But before we bounce out, let's ask some of the questions, a little bit more on the lighthearted side that we ask each of our guests. So, Andrew, what was your first job, and what were some of the fundamentals that you learned back then you still use today?
Well, first job, I'm going to kind of omit the paper boy. I think when I was 14 or 13 or something. That was scary.
That's a solid occupation.
No, I'm gonna skip it though. No, my first professional job. Let me say it that way, because I do think there's a real connection between what I do now and what I did in the hotel industry. I worked in hotels before I started in recruiting, and I was a bellman first. And did night audit as well, graveyard. If you want to have an interesting job, do graveyard for a while. So I was a bellman at a corporate hotel in Cupertino, California, and really there I learned about serving others is really all that it's about. And so in hotels, you're creating an experience for every guest that comes in that makes them feel important and valued so that they come back. And boy, you tell me if I'm wrong, but as a recruiter, you want to provide an experience to the hiring manager and to those candidates that makes them feel valued and important, because they are, so that they feel like they have a positive experience, whether they're hired or not, right? So absolutely a good connection there, I think.
That's great. And so what have you read recently or listened to or even watched that you'd actually like to recommend to our listeners?
And you're not talking about TV shows, right? Okay.
No, we did have someone that did mention the Gilmore Girls. And
oh my gosh,
yes.
Shooting way back. I mean, is that's like not
well, I
still
think
fresh?
It's going through a resurgence right now.
It's coming back.
Yes.
That's right. I did
Yes.
see about that.
Yes.
My wife and I did used to watch that. So.
Yeah, so we'll actually have a link to the Gilmore Girls on Netflix or Amazon in the show notes.
So some of my favorite books, and I don't know whether you've read these or not, but if real quickly, I'd say The Power of Habit is a brilliant book. Simplifies an understanding of how habits are created and how much of our lives are habits, really. And so I'd say definitely read that if you've not. Emotional Intelligence 2.0 is an awesome book. And what I really like about this is it helps you get in touch with your own emotional intelligence and improve it. And it does so partially by giving you an assessment that you take. It's the first book I've read where you take an assessment mid-book so that you tune how you read the rest of the book. Very impressive. And then ultimately, I'd say that book I mentioned earlier by that brilliant woman, Deborah Trappen, Fire Up, Taking Your Life and Business to 11. It's an awesome read.
Well, and we'll have links to all of those so everyone can go check those out. So as our final question for you today, Andrew, if you were sitting across the table having a cup of coffee with your 90-year-old self, what would you say to you today?
Well, I'd like to say to my 90-year-old self first, wow, you did it. You're still alive.
That's a good wicket.
Right on. But what I say back to myself now, I think I would look at this season of my life, if I were 90 looking back now, and just say, lay down your fears and move forward boldly towards your goals and to have audacious goals. Just go for it, because, really the only reason we don't really is fear, right? Fear in our lives. So that's what I would say.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's great. So So much great information today, Andrew. I love this conversation. So much more to consume as well. So definitely check out the show notes and more about Andrew. But let's talk about how folks can track you down.
Well, I think the easy way is LinkedIn.
Okay.
I'm an open networker. I don't call it outlying, but reach out to me and I'll accept your connect, and message me and I'll get back to you. And I'll be as quick as I can with that. But ultimately, that's the best way to reach out to me.
Okay, great. And we'll actually have a link to Andrew's LinkedIn profile on the website at thecareerq.com. So unfortunately, that's all we have for today. Check us out on iTunes, leave a review, and we will catch you on the next episode.
Thanks for listening to today's episode. Be sure to head on over to thecareerq.com where you can get more information, show notes, and related articles to today's topic. Also, if you like what you're hearing, head on over to iTunes, subscribe to the podcast, and make sure you leave us a rating and a review. We'd love to hear your feedback. Thanks again.